Have you ever wondered how big the Earth is compared to the rest of the solar system? Because I have many times, and I'm always surprised just how minuscule our planet is compared to other celestial bodies. Don't believe me? Well, let's imagine our sun is the size of a soccer ball. Guess how big Earth would be and how far away it would be. I guarantee you're wrong, because it's the size of the head of a pin 26 yards away from the soccer ball. In actual scale, that distance would be 93 billion miles away from each other. Shout out to Mark Rober with that model. Dude is an absolute genius. With that being said, there's a lot to talk about regarding space. Hi, my name is Undead Talks, and today I'll be talking about how space is freaking weird, yet absolutely fascinating. Growing up, I've always had an interest in space, mostly because of how cool it is. From asteroids and moons the size of large states, to black holes so large that they can consume our entire solar system. There is so much to learn about astronomy. And as amazing as it is, there are also many things that make it incomprehensible and downright terrifying when you try to comprehend them. Like turning into spaghetti guts if you're near a black hole, which is probably even more painful than you can imagine. So relax and try not to think too hard about how crazy space is. So when talking about the universe, the most common question is, how the hell was it even created? And to be honest, scientists aren't entirely sure about it. Yes, the most common theory is, of course, the Big Bang theory, which has the most evidence to back it up. The problem is, there are still major questions that hasn't answered, such as what caused the explosion in the first place, or why galaxies were formed, or why my cat keeps sleeping on top of my PC. But it's still the best theory we got. So I'll use it to explain the birth of the universe. So our universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, and at the very beginning, all of it was compressed into a very small point, smaller than a subatomic particle, which for all of the boys watching this video may be familiar with. Everything existed within the singularity, and it had infinite heat, energy, and density. Then in 10 to the negative 32 seconds later, which is a 1 followed by 32 zeros of a second, also called 100 nonillion, cosmic inflation occurred, and this is when the Big Bang truly begins. I also forgot, the Big Bang isn't an explosion. Rather, it's the universe expanding faster than even the speed of light. At this point, it's the size of a golf ball. Then in 1 microsecond, the first particles, which are neutrons, protons, and electrons, were formed. Then in 3 minutes, elements like helium and hydrogen were formed. The universe at this point is still as hot as Ryan Reynolds, at 5 trillion degrees. It would take more than 380,000 years for it to cool down enough where hydrogen and helium could finally combine with electrons to create the first neutral atoms. This era is called the Dark Ages, since there was no light at all, making it pitch black. It lasted for another 120 million years until the first stars were created, finally reintroducing light. Stars are created once enough clouds of gas are condensed and pressurized by gravity. This era is known as the Cosmic Dawn, and it lit up the universe for about 200 million years. After that, enough stars were made, creating small galaxies, which merged with other small galaxies to form true galaxies. Supermassive black holes were also created, usually in the center of galaxies, such as our Milky Way galaxy. This era lasted for billions of years, until 10 billion years later, after the Big Bang, dark energy sped up the universe's expansion. As for our solar system, it was created by our sun 4.6 billion years ago, when cosmic dust and debris clumped together around it, forming the planets, moons, and asteroids. Our Earth was especially lucky, being located in the Goldilocks zone, where it wasn't too hot where the water would evaporate, but it also wasn't too cold for water to freeze. The oceans were created, and life with it. It's insane how old our universe is compared to the human race. But do you know what's also insane? These things. So when talking about black holes, you first have to talk about stars. Now most stars like our sun will continue to get bigger and bigger, just like a Discord mod eating Taco Bell. Eventually, they'll get into their gym mindset and shut off that fat in a colorful nebula, becoming a white dwarf. Now for stars that are 1.8 to 2.4 times heavier than the sun's mass, they'll explode into a supernova and become neutron stars. And if they are bigger and heavier than 2.8 times the mass, they'll collapse so hard that nothing in the universe, not even gravity, can prevent it, and will become a black hole. At this point, it becomes a literal abyss where neither any mass nor light can escape, and anything that gets sucked into it stays in and never comes back. I'd make another fat joke, but that would be too much. So here's another picture of my cat Bella. Now where was I? Oh yeah, black holes. Now I'd like to also preface that they aren't vacuum cleaners. Yeah, the gravity forces things to come to it, but that only happens if you're nearby. At a faraway distance, planets and stars would just orbit around it, like how our solar system orbits around the sun. In fact, if our sun turned into a black hole, it would be the size of 3 kilometers or 2 miles, and our orbit would stay the exact same, excluding the lack of heat and light, of course. Now let's talk about the shape and form of a black hole. Black holes are, well, black, because of a Hawking radiation, which are hypothetical particles formed by the event horizon. Speaking of which, the event horizon is the outer surface area of a black hole. This is where light and radiation continues to get closer and closer. Past it, nothing escapes, and at the very center is the singularity. I'm gonna be honest, I know more about Warhammer lore than whatever the hell happens here, because all knowledge of quantum physics fails, and all that remains are questions and theories. Now the biggest question, of course, what happens inside the singularity? Well, we don't know. No, I'm actually serious, all math fails at trying to explain the singularity, so there's only our imagination. Now as for what would happen if you went near a black hole, well, there is a theory. You would, of course, die, well, obviously, but within the milliseconds before that is insane. As you get closer to it, you start seeing time speed up outside of the black hole, but for you, it'd be completely normal. It would be like being in a time machine. As you get closer and closer, you would experience spaghettification, which is when an object gets stretched by extreme gravitational forces. Once you enter into the singularity completely, well, we don't know. Would you die? Most definitely. Would you travel through time? Maybe? Who knows, but with all that said, black holes are the most fascinating celestial bodies within our universe. As for how long they can live for, they'll exist for Google years, or a 1 with 100 zeros behind them. So they're basically immortal. With that being said, this was a really fun subject to research about. From the birth of the universe to the absolute insanity that is black holes, space is a wonderful subject that I would recommend everyone to learn about. There are still so many things I want to talk about, but I'll leave that for another video. I hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to like and subscribe. Oh, and comment your ideas on any topics you'd like me to talk about, and I'll happily make a video about it. And until then, later.